Welcome to this small video about the actions in our strategy scenario. So where we look at implementing our scenario strategy. It's based on the book here in the corner on scenario-based strategy by Paul de Ruijters. The chapter he has on actions and the implementation might be the weakest one, but let's go through it anyway and consider it from the perspective as it is project planning and project management. There's also this quote that I have next to me here. A pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. I rather like this quote because it highlights what it is that we do in the actions. We readjust the sails. We plan, but we keep it open. This is also where things become a little bit tricky because in the essence, a classic waterfall project management, which is built in this chapter, kind of falls apart, but let's get back to that. The focus here is that we want to have the strategic thinking transformed into strategic actions. We've done the talks, we've gathered the people who want to be, they can see it, but now we need to move into actions. We need to move forward in time. We do this by, first of all, detailing the roadmap. The milestones, the goals needs to have actions linked to them. And by actions, I mean behaviors. It can be direct actions, direct projects, but it might also be processes that we want to change or the organizational change in this. What we're doing here is not reorganizing, but we are pre-organizing, which means that we're preparing the organization for the changes which are needed in order to move from our current stage to the future, hopefully positive scenario. The planning is, in essence, converting the goals and milestones into actions, as I just mentioned. But how do we do this? Well, we need to select the criteria for option striking. This was a little bit tricky, these options, but in essence, it's opportunities that we could take, and we need to figure out when we will do it and what makes us take an option and do something or stop something, and what makes us postpone it. That's the first step. We need to figure out what we want into our plans. Then we assign responsibilities, and these persons, department heads, section leaders, division managers, these are the ones who are going to help us implement it. And they are the ones who will do the action planning for real. We also need to do a prioritization. Some of the roadmap goals, some of the roadmap milestones might be more important than others. Some of them might be closer to us, some of them might be further away. We need to make sure that we get the most important ones done first, the ones that we need to take action on now. Again, the backcasting from our roadmap will help us in this process. Then it's the resourcing, both financial-wise and people-wise. We cannot do everything, even if we wanted, even if everything made sense. There is an economic framework, there is a people framework that we need to stay within. And then we need to figure out how to communicate it. We need to make sure that everybody is on board. And this is also where we get into the critical path. If you remember back to classic project management, the Perth chart and the chart where we start from day one and we look at what activities needs to move forward. These activities that cannot be postponed without us moving the final deadline, that's our critical path. This is again why we need our time framing for each of the activities. This is also where we move from primarily having an outside-in perspective. So we look at the world, what is happening there, and then take that into our organization, to also consider an inside-out perspective. What is it that we have within the organization that we need to do out there? In the same way where we have looked at the backcasting, looked out into the future and what is happening now, we are also looking the other direction with what's in the present and what needs to happen and what do we need to do. So we need to have both sides meet here. Which also means that when we have done this, we start to manage things. We have done the plan. We exploit the energies of things that are going well, because we need the positive action to enforce the actions towards the goals, the milestones. We need to make sure we start activities, we stop activities, and we celebrate things. We need to have the ceremonies to mark the milestones. Also, we need to be able to ensure that we postpone or prepone things. We move things back and forth on our timeline. And this is why I earlier on said that there is a challenge in this in terms of our regular classical waterfall project management, because there we would not do such a thing. But in this case, we should. The last part in our action planning is what I call the storytelling, and by the way, Paul de Ruijters as well. And this actually makes sense. Every organization should, everyone in the organization should understand the trends and the assumptions behind the strategy. This is very important because if we want to have people taking actions, we need to have activities, actions, which ensures that people get on board. We want to have them believe and understand the trends and assumptions. Often you see a strategy being introduced in a 20-minute PowerPoint by top management. If we want people to have the strategy living with them, well, they need to believe in the underlying things. We could do this by using examples, and being the examples. We want digitalization. Well, we start out by digitizing ourselves. We want people to share information across the company. Well, we start out by sharing these things. We also want them to participate. We want to get them in, and we want to give attention to the words, the concerns that they have. No matter what, we will become smarter on what happens in our organization by giving that attention and letting people participate. Lastly, the stories that we tell should include both the logos, the logics, the ethos, and the pathos, so that we have comprehensive storylines, the story that we tell within our organization to drive it forward. One of the things that I heard the other day is that the Danish toy manufacturer, Lego, have a library with 10 people employed, which has been gathering stories since the early 1980s. So 40 years ago, they started gathering stories because the storytelling is important in creating a strategic culture. That's what we need to do here. We need to have the actions, and we need to have people feeling the actions. We need to have people believing the actions, and we need to have people doing the actions. Thank you for watching this small video about the actions, which is linked up to the roadmap. See you in the next one.